Hello, I'm Ruth. I'm a psychologist and I'm a co-founder of Minds Thrive, and I'm here today with Georgina.
I'm also a psychologist and co-founder of Minds Thrive.
And we're here in our new studio. Now, when I say studio, basically it's my spare room and it's a lick of paint.
You do paint well, Ruth.
Thank
It
you.
looks lovely.
Thanks. But we're not here to talk about my painting skills. We're here to talk about dyslexia. And it's a topic that is close to our hearts for several reasons. Georgina, why would you say dyslexia matters to you?
So I am dyslexic. I was one of the first cohorts in the early 1980s, I think, to be recognised as having dyslexia.
Whereas I'm a little bit older than you. And so for me, I am dyslexic. I've never been diagnosed. When I was a child, though, I was told you're probably dyslexic. And then that was it. But I guess the teachers, the adults, they didn't really know what to do with it. But thankfully, things have moved on.
Well, Jamie Oliver has brought this to people's attention recently. He's done a lovely documentary speaking very authentically about his own experience of dyslexia and thinking through the impact of dyslexia on individuals and asking the question, are we doing a good enough job in the classroom in supporting our dyslexic children?
Yeah, so it really got us thinking about our experiences and also I guess, our clinical experiences and our insights as psychologists.
Mm.
Um, Georgina, what would you say, I guess, what would you say you found interesting in the conversations that Jamie's having?
I was really touched by his personal journey, and he reflected on how it's impacted his self-worth and identity. As the person in the classroom, he was always struggling, and he talked about how difficult it was reading. Um, but he had an amazing outlet. He had his father's kitchen, and he identified his culinary skills through their restaurant business. And aren't we all grateful that he did? You know, the exceptional Jamie Oliver and all that he's brought to the world through cooking, but also the issues that he raises.
Yeah, I was really interested in some of the stats he talked about. I think he was saying it was like about 15% of people, as the stat that he used for dyslexia and other neurodiversities.
I think it was 10% with going up to potentially 20. This is
Wow.
the lovely thing with stats. They're so
Yes,
variable,
aren't
but
they?
we're looking at not an insignificant portion of people experiencing challenges.
Yeah, I'm interested. Tell me about when you were growing up. What were your early experiences of dyslexia?
Well, I was fortunate in my mother was doing some reading at the time and recognised the signs. The school that I was in certainly didn't. And so, of her own initiative, she was able to get me diagnosed. And when she reported back to headmistress, she said, children at this school don't have dyslexia. So, quite rightly, she found me another school, and this school uh, was recognising dyslexia, providing additional support. It had more of a focus on the arts, and at one stage, it was definitely a better fit for me.
What was the emotional impact for you?
For me,
Yeah, of being
of the
dyslexic.
yeah, so for me, it was a positive one because it helped me to recognise my challenges. So it sabotaged the what is wrong with me? I understood that I was different and I had to figure out how to negotiate my life with that difference. And I think my mother really helped me to find my strengths. So when I was at school, I was told, do you know what, as a dyslexic person, you've got to work about 4 times harder as yeah, 4 times harder than anybody else. And for me, that has been true. So we started doing exams early at school. So I would have been really little, 7 or 8. And we do exams at Christmas, we do exams at Easter. And my mother taught me how to revise. She taught me that discipline. She helped me to figure out how my brain works and how I retain information. And that was a gift. I mean, it was forged in a furnace, but it was a gift. How about you, Ruth?
Do you want to ask that again?
How about you, Ruth?
Well, I guess for me, because I didn't have a sort of official diagnosis and people didn't really know what it was, I was aware that I struggled with reading. I struggled with, like, my handwriting's always been not the best. I struggled with spelling. And in adult life, I've realised that actually I struggle with the processing speeds and so on, that I just processed in a different way. I think maybe because I didn't have a diagnosis or there wasn't the sort of support that you're talking about, I had an enormous amount of self-doubt. I felt huge amounts of shame. I believed that I was thick. Everybody else was better than me, and I globalized that as a child. So everyone was better than me. And through life and a bit of therapy, I'm addressing that, and I'm shifting and starting to recognize myself as equal to others. And so I suppose that's sort of the emotional impact. And then my coping strategies, I guess I got very creative in how to write sentences that I'd swap it around. So I've got quite an extensive vocabulary, because I used to think, well, I can't spell that, so I'd swap it out swap it out, swap it out, swap it out. And it developed quite an interesting creative writing style as well. But one day, like so many people, I'm going to write that book.
I would say that people recognise my dyslexia through my spellings. I don't think about how to spell words. I write them. I just write them, because if I thought about how to spell them, it would disrupt my flow, or I wouldn't write anything at all. So with me, you have to kind of roll with it. And I do get a little bit irritable if people point it out. But I survive with a really good secretary who kind of goes through everything for me. And
isn't that interesting? Because we've got the same diagnosis, me unofficially, you officially, but we've got the same, but our struggles are so different, and our what we like and don't like are so different as well. Because I like people correcting my spelling. I'm like, I'll write it and you correct the spelling. I'm quite happy with that.
so
Whereas for you find it annoying.
it annoys me, because they tell me that's wrong, this is how you spell it, and they act like I will remember. I'm never going to remember that. My short-term memory is terrible. My long-term memory is quite good, if I can get it in there. That's the trick. Short-term processing speed is much slower. But I recognise that about myself, and I could spend all day spinning my wheels trying to compensate for it, or I could just go, do you know what, this is me, this is how I roll with it.
Yeah. So in the workplace, I guess what you're doing is you've got your systems and your strategies set up to accommodate your struggles, to play to your strengths, and add your preferences as well. Like I say, I like people correcting my spelling. I don't assume that they're expecting me to remember, because I won't. I won't. In fact, I have learned how to spell disappointment recently, because oh my goodness, this is quite embarrassing. So I draw a graph for people who are perfectionists, and there's a real irony in this. So I draw a graph of perfection, and I draw a line, and then I draw a line along the bottom, and I say that's reality. And then I draw a line higher up, and I say that's perfectionism. And then I say to them, what do you think goes in the middle? Leave a dramatic pause, and they have a think. Nobody's guessed it yet. And then I go, let me write it out for you. And I get a red pen, and in capitals, I write disappointment. I've been spelling it wrong for years. Only recently, somebody said to me, you've spelt that wrong. And I was like, it's like, what, it's either double S or double P, whichever way round it was, I've been doing it the wrong way round. So all these perfectionists have probably been having their toes curl watching me imperfectly. But I like to think I'm modelling something for them.
Yep. We don't model perfection. But I wanted to think about workplaces, Ruth, because I think within all of us is gold. And we're so fortunate, aren't we, that Jamie Oliver found his gold. And it might not have been the case if he hadn't been exposed to the right people, the right circumstances. Can we find the gold in our employees? And I think what can often happen, and somebody explained something beautifully to me very recently. The word corporation comes from the word meaning body. So a corporation or a group of individuals form a body. Each part of that body has a different role and function. So the eye does something different to the hand. Don't try and make a hand an eye, and vice versa. So, can you find the strengths within the people around you or the strengths within your employees that allow them to use their skill sets and get into flow rather than enforcing something on them? Because I think what Jamie was saying, certainly what was my early experience in education, is there's something wrong with you. You can't do it. You don't have anything to contribute. I was told I would get one GCSE and that would be in art. A PhD later, I have, yeah, but I'm still dyslexic.
Yeah.
I still have challenges. It hasn't gone away.
Yeah.
So let people find their strengths and look for them.
And I think that comes from ourselves as well. So that's like, the boss, but then there's something about us taking responsibility for saying, I need help with this or I need help with that. So we were talking previously about when we're at training days, they hand out vignettes, which is like a case study. And they say, read this case and then discuss in groups what you think we would do with this model to support this client. And normally it's on like 2 sides of A4. Now, by the time I've read the first paragraph, everyone else has finished reading the page and they're turning it over. Now, for me to say I haven't finished reading or to put my hand up and seek an adaptation, I have to feel psychologically safe.
Mm.
And there's times and places where I'm perfectly happy to do that. There's like my close team. I'm perfectly happy to say I need this adaptation, but there are places where there's no way I would do that because I'd be just stepping out and making myself incredibly vulnerable. So I think there's something about not just sort of placing it at the boss's feet saying you need to sort this out, but thinking about workplace cultures. And I think that's what we love at Minds Thrive, isn't it? About thinking about things from psychological perspectives, thinking about it in its own unique ways, the unique individual, the unique needs and culture of a business, and working out how to navigate through what could be quite tricky and problematic and could be preventing you from really tapping into your gold or preventing you as a boss from tapping into those wonderful resources of your team. The gold inside is kind of hidden and not accessible because of all the the blocks and challenges around it.
Well, at Minds Thrive, we talk about a we, not me culture because I think our strengths are often found in relationship. And I do think there is an onus on the people at the top of the organisation to think about what they're flowing down. Is it nurturance or is it something else? And I think many of us, unfortunately, know what it's like when something stinky is coming down that hill. And that is something we don't have control over. But if we think about bottom up, how do we support each other? How do we give voice to our needs? So, first of all, we need to recognize them, and it needs to feel okay and safe to express what those needs are. But it is true, there needs to be wisdom here that some organizations, that's not a safe thing to do. Hopefully, you might find pockets of safety within that, but it's complicated. So, the area of neurodiversity dyslexia that Jamie is raising is important not just for children, but also for adults. So our question is, how do we create a culture where people are nurtured to find their roles, find their talents within that community?
I think there's a couple of areas where people can focus to help with that. So there's a need for clarity. I think if we can be clear about things, there's a need for flexibility as well. So the more flexibility we can bring in, that can often help when things get stuck, not always. Um, Respectful communication as well, and strengths-based approaches. And that comes down to one of our core themes, which is find the gold. So find the gold in other people. So what are their strengths? So Georgina, I can point at you and I can say, you are, I'm going to be rude here, you are dreadful at writing a clear document in draft one. It's like a paragraph that goes on for 500 words. But I'm training you up, aren't I?
You are. I'm
You,
getting
you,
good with the bullets.
you, I have to introduce you to the concept of bullet points. So I could focus on that and go, you're not, you need to. But actually, what we miss there is seeing the gold that sits within you. And if I focus too much on what you're not doing and what you can't do, what does that do to your self-worth, your sense of contributing, your sense of being part of something?
Absolutely.
And so I think, sort of to conclude, really, what we're thinking about is how do we find the gold? How do we dig through the dross, the stuff that sits in the way of us reaching our potential, or not necessarily potential in a striving, ambitious sort of way, but just really connecting with our authentic self and being the hand or the eye or the ear or whatever part of the body we are.
And I would say to ask people what adaptations work for them. Just super quickly. When I was at school, I was being Alice in Wonderland in the school show, and knowing I was dyslexic, the teacher decided it would be really helpful if she blew up the font size. So everybody had these nice A4 sheets. I had this massive thing. It was so cumbersome and difficult to maneuver. She thought it was helpful. It was massively unhelpful. I've never not been able to read. But that is an assumption that people will often make about dyslexia. How does your dyslexia impact you would be the question, and how can I support you with that?
Absolutely. That's like you're a hand and they've gone, I know what can help this hand. I'm going to put a pair of glasses on it.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's being curious and inviting conversations, opening up conversations of support.
So I would like to say thank you to Jamie for opening up this conversation.